everybody. So today, Jennifer and I are continuing our conversation about the ascension and how it is actually much more expansive than we've ever known. And I didn't really expect to go where we ended up. We actually start out primarily with telling Jennifer's story or some of her story, but then that expands out into receiving more information that leads us into a conversation discussing how the work that we're doing individually to bring back our fragments, our parts, dealing with our emotions, our past lives, current circumstances that we're in, expanding our own consciousness, actually leads to the expansion of intergalactic consciousness, as well as how the ascension then is impacting all that ever is and was, which includes our past lives and why past life healing is so important, even if you don't know that you're doing it. So this is a very expansive conversation. Again, I always tell everybody, take what resonates for you and toss the rest aside. Hopefully what you'll get out of this is a few things that will help you understand this process further, how expansive it really is, and how it all begins with you. So thank you so much for joining me today. I'm Carolyn. I'm a channel. I'm a distance energy healer, and I'm a spiritual awakening mentor. And I offer these conversations and channels for your awakening and ascension journey support. So for those of you who are new, thank you so much for joining me for the first time. You want to check out my other videos, some of my older ones, where I really talk about the spiritual awakening journey, some of the basic premises around it, some of the things you may be going through, the processes, the stages. And lately, we've been hitting on some topics that are much more expansive and kind of the big picture view of ascension and awakening. But I have lots of videos that talk about spiritual awakening in general if you're new to the process. So check them out. So hopefully you'll find them useful for your journey forward. Also, down below in the description box, you're going to find a link that takes you to a video on how to create flow in your body for health and wellness, which is extremely important during the awakening journey. Self-care, the foundation of self-care, building that out for this awakening journey is critical. So check that out. It then leads you to my email list. Most importantly, so that email list offers you a channeled message each week, typically on a Friday, from the Light Keepers. The Light Keepers are a group of angelic beings that I've been channeling since I started this YouTube channel. So join me there if you'd like support for your week moving forward. Okay, so we're going to get right into the conversation with Jennifer and myself. Again, these are just conversations we're having, and you'll see in there where I say, well, maybe this will be a video. So we just kind of go with the flow, and if we think it makes sense, then I pop this up for you guys to watch. So hopefully you'll take something away, and I will see you after the conversation.
Now we were talking, I said, like, we're talking about that experience and how the raw collective's tied. And I said, I think I'm attached to a lot of, well, I am. And it's even that one particular little slippage. We're talking about Jennifer and the raw collective, but I have a pretty significant aspect of myself that is involved with the elders in the Pleiades.
Yes.
Okay. And there was some stuff that happened because of this with that too. So It's not just the raw collective in Egypt. It's there's so much, but we don't necessarily have to try to go in order or attach them to each other. But when
I think the biggest thing, just for me, for the focus that I have on my channel, is ensuring that as we're telling stories, we're not just telling a story, we're teaching them something for themselves to take forward. And
just the nature of the reality system that we're in. Even if I can't find something that is specifically relevant in your life about this thing, it helps us start to understand the concept of being the nature of our reality and how things are tied together in the quantum nature.
That's what I'm talking about. That's what I'm talking about. Something to relate to, that we're able to, we tell your story, right? But then we relate it to the collective or to, yes, absolutely.
Yes.
So that's my
own. A lot of it might be that because some of this it's pretty specific.
Yeah.
But it does give kind of a an example of the quantumness and almost like, okay, this is not just a theory. I experienced it and this is how it manifested into my life.
Yes.
Now, whether that's going to happen to them exactly the same way, I don't know, but it helps them understand how it can,
right?
And how maybe they can change their concept of how tied in we are. And that does affect them directly, even if they don't have the exact same experience that I had. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely.
Because of our conversation, like I said, you and I spoke, and a lot of interest came in, non-physical interest, a lot more group. Those who were impacted, there's a lot of interest in getting this helping get this straightened out, and helping with the understanding of the whole thing. So after we recorded our last one, I had a huge influx of beings. Okay. So since then, it's been kind of amazing how my perspective has broadened. But what they were starting to do is look into, hear how we were talking about my younger girl, my child, how she was affected. But then we're starting to look at some of my other aspects. And I was getting a lot of messages like, pull back your aspects that are involving themselves in the Orion War. You need to pull those back in and protect and preserve those aspects. They don't need to be there.
Yes. I'm going to stop you so that I get some understanding on that. What do you mean by pull your aspects back in from the Orion War? Are they saying that it's necessary to bring those
them back,
pieces of you
energetic? Yeah, okay. Energetically pull back your energy, your aspects that are involving themselves in the Orion War. Because what I've realized is, as this displacement occurred, like I said, there was a lot of us, and I didn't understand exactly where we went, how, what we were involved in. But now I'm seeing they're saying you need to try to be more in sync with your kind of goddess aspect of yourself, and then you also need to command back your energy from those aspects of you that are participating in the Orion War. Pull them back in, because you need to protect and preserve yourself. And you don't need to be in that. So what I'm thinking is, a lot of my aspects that got displaced, there might be involvements in things that are not healthy for me, or that I did not plan for myself, or, for a number of reasons. So now I'm starting to get more instruction on, you need to start pulling some of these back, preserve and protect some of these aspects of yours that are out doing things, bring them back home, bring them back in.
I'm going to stop you there, because the first thing I think about is so does that mean in your journey, as you're being told to do that, did they say anything at all about what the rest of us are supposed to be doing that aren't tapped in like you? In other words, I think those things naturally happen, but when we say pull back in, well, a lot of people don't have any idea of what they're pulling back in, or what I'm saying? Like, did they talk about the collective part of that at all? Or is this you significant, or is this you only? Because what I've understood in the past is those of us here on Earth today, the vast majority of us were in the Orion Wars, and we're here for that reason, to clear a lot of that up.
But it's not separate from, it's actually, everything's occurring together.
Right.
So as you're clearing, or you feel like you're clearing, you're actually balancing energy for another thing that is occurring.
Yes.
Also. Okay.
Right.
On a different plane that you are participating in.
Because we're all bringing it back to same, the balance is what they're saying.
Right.
It's the balances, and we're having to do that till we get to here, and then that oneness. Yes.
Yes. So you remember when we were talking about one time, we were noticing that there, in a lot of scenarios, there's like two brothers in the same family that are butting heads and fighting all the time, right? And really going against each other. And there's an inter-family dynamic of kind of like two tug and pulls. Yep. And we started to realize that a lot of us brought both energies into this person, so we could use our emotional body, our mind, emotional, human complex body and consciousness to try to help balance these two energies within ourselves, to see if we could help balance the imbalance that plays out in these other stories. Well, these other stories, it's not like they happened they're in the past, we can think of them that way, but they are actually happening now.
Yes. Okay. Can I stop you? And then I want you to come back to that.
Yes.
I have actual proof of that through a video that I did about 2 years ago with,
Awesome.
you know, Celeste, and then there's a third
Yes.
gal who we're both connected with. We were doing regular Zooms each week,
Yes.
and we had, and I need to find it and send it to you. I hope to God I didn't delete it, because they showed up through a portal. She creates portals where she goes, she doesn't even know it. They showed up in her house, and they're answering our questions with knocks. Yes.
Oh my goodness.
Oh, you will die. And when I look at that video, I'm like, oh my God, we act like this is just common because we're so nonplussed about it because it'd been happening. I only recorded it once. And so they'd show up for our meetings. But the point in that is they were living their life right now.
Yes.
Or we were. It was the us as the druids. And then my mother shows up too, because she was the like
she was involved in that life with you.
Totally. But anyway, my point is I totally get everything's happening now. I will clip this part out, but so continue forward.
It's okay. I don't think it's a good idea. I don't think it's a bad idea to leave some of the stuff, even if we kind of get off track for a second. We talk about some of these multidimensional metaphysical concepts, because they can be kind of like you can struggle with it for a while because we're so entrenched in linearity.
Oh yeah.
But if you kind of give yourself a little bit more information, you can stretch your consciousness a little bit and start to see how, that could be happening, right?
Yeah, because this was very clearly, they were coming through from their place in time, which, you know, was happening now. They showed up as themselves, which was us in that time.
Yes.
Right. And talking to us, answering questions, telling us what they want us to do, who they were. It was such proof of knowing that everything's happening all at the same time.
Right. They weren't pulling from history. It was in real time as they were having the very experience that you're talking about. Yes. Wild, isn't it? Yeah.
Which goes to the whole idea that we've talked about previously of when the big bang, in quotes, happened, everything happened all at once. And that's what's happening right now. Everything happens all at once, right? It's not linearity.
It's all there. Yeah.
It's all there.
Created. Yes.
That's right. Exactly.
Yeah. Now, in a more beautiful sense, or a more, I would say, with intention, I think that, like, what I think of, I've heard it called the original thought, or the original dream from the perfect mind. So basically, everything, the whole dream, the whole idea of all of it in its most perfected form was just a thought that was expressed.
Yeah,
and
it created an energy. It created an energy of
and it came from an all that is type of being, of highly creative, more of kind of a little bit more of the feminine, hyper creative, with her masculine, which is the hyper manifesting, I guess is what you want to say. But it came from, they called her the perfect mind. So I think that is the form of creation. It doesn't have to go through a period of playing itself out over time. It is there, and it is instantly created, and all possible, everything is all included in that original thought.
Yes.
So some of the ones, the bang ones, I think were maybe they were creation, but they maybe weren't done quite as beautifully and organically as the original one was done. I think some of the other ones were done a little bit but because there's been multiple bangs. I think there's been something like 84, at least 84 that we know of, big bangs. Yeah, so but the original kind of idea for
the original thought.
Yes, the original dream, you know. Sometimes I even feel I connect to this particular being that has had this, and sometimes I even feel a little bit of a almost heartache. And I feel like, I said, if you feel like there's something in your heart, like you have heartache that this doesn't look like your idea. And she said, yes, that's correct. So when I feel her, she's huge, expansive, unlimited. She's this massive, massive being, beautiful, beautiful energy. But I can feel a little tug on the heart when I'm interfacing with her energy. So I think there is something there about wanting to see the purity, or the idea, the original idea, playing out the way,
exactly.
You know what I mean? So,
So let's go back to where I then interrupted. But I think it was good that we spoke to that for a brief part of this. Go back to the Orion Wars. Remember you were where we left off,
yes.
you were saying to bring
Yeah. So
back in of the Orion.
yeah. So, they were saying there's a lot of rewinding to do. And, they were mentioning this in our last video because of this kind of weird displacement. It rearranged time, or it changed the course of time. Mm-hmm. There was a lot that happened, and there's a lot of rescue. And I'm saying now that it picked up quite a bit, and now I'm getting, information, and I'm being shown or just kind of even told this is what we're doing, because we're in a protect and preserve mode now, where we're pulling everything back because of the energy of kind of how these things got blasted in one different directions. And now there's maybe aspects or energies that are involved in things that were not intended.
Yes.
So they're saying pull them back, and we have our ability to do this with our own energy. Sometimes we go through maintenance where we say, I'm detaching any cords that are not for my highest good. I am pulling back my energy.
Yes, and we don't have to know. Purify. Know the specifics.
What you're doing is with the very thing. You might be pulling aspects back from the Orion War when you say, I don't want to pull back my energy purified if it's, it left me or is involved in anything that was not for my highest good. You might very well be doing the same thing I'm doing. They just told me specifically, bring those back.
Okay, so I'm going to say something now that I'm getting that they're talking about that is applicable to every individual. So what they're talking about for your example that you're giving with the Orion Wars, bring that back. They're saying a practice that each person can present to themselves is in meditation, in mindfulness, in breath work, whatever part of that each person uses for themselves, is to make that intention. Because this is what we're doing now. As we've talked, I don't need to repeat that, but we're bringing all those parts of us back in that organic way. And what they're saying is make that intention to bring those pieces back into, okay, I have chills. They just said to realign or to align again. And so it feels to me, and tell me what you think about this, that as that intention to bring those pieces back, because we don't want, okay, this is the fragments they're talking about. They don't want fragments out here of us, right? It's those fragments need to come back into us. And what they're saying too is as that intention is set and as that then occurs, they just said the lost parts of you or the unclaimed parts of you, like Orion Wars, right? Perfect example. They said they'll reconvene, okay, for understanding. So we may, as we do that, set that intention, because this helps create that oneness within us. As we create that intention, we may then start feeling, okay, they just said like what we would consider new aspects of us. Does that resonate at all?
Sure. Oh yes, absolutely. Absolutely. And so when I was doing this, when they asked me to do this, and I just kind of sunk in, I've been trying to meditate more and really like sit quietly and see what is needed right now. And I did do the intention of, getting a really strong connection between me and my goddess facet. And I felt a huge elevation and expansion there, which was very helpful. And then I started pulling back some of these. And what I thought about this is Orion War. That's interesting, because this girl has gotten to a point where I kind of feel the level of, I really am in the understanding that duality and warring is a illusion. It's one of the illusionary constructs that's going on here, almost as like a game or a learning level. And I feel like I'm kind of past that. It's been one of the things that has been bothering me so much about some of the energies I'm in. I'm like, I feel like you resonate something and you kind of stay in that field. And I feel like I've dropped really low, like where there's some warring and weird stuff going on that I have already my consciousness has kind of transcended the concept of it already. But yet here I find myself in it. And I'm like, that doesn't make sense. It actually goes against some of the laws, right? Why am I in this lower when I actually have woken up beyond this point?
Yeah. And
I realized, okay, well, listen to what we're talking about. We had some redirects, rediverts. We had things scattered all over the place and things that I'm like, ooh, So that makes a lot of sense to me. And so even more so importantly, that I'm calling me back, come back to home, whatever's going on,
Yes.
wherever you are, come home.
Because
right?
for some reason, okay, so let's stop there a second because I want to unpack this piece. So for some reason, what I continually get is this consciousness of us as Jennifer, as Carolyn, as everybody else, as their individuals in this now moment, we're the ones that everything's converging back into. Now,
yes.
Okay. So I guess the question is, why this versus like what's happening to them then that's happening at the same time? Is this a consciousness experience that's more important? Do you know what I mean? Or the full on vessel that houses everything else? Do you know what I'm saying? Like this one,
it's really wild to watch it, and it's in a visual, because when I'm inquiring or even thinking about possibly inquiring in a minute, I immediately get the answer in visuals when I'm in meditation. And what they showed me is we are bringing in, it's almost like it comes in and it picks up our energetic and goes back out. Okay, like in that tori around our body, it picks up our energetic of what we're bringing in, say, through our heart center from our higher being. And as our consciousness changes, these lines of activity that are going on all over the place as a projection out of our being, they pick up our activations or maybe higher consciousness understandings that we've gotten, whatever's happened to Jennifer in my conscious. These lines come in and they like pick up the newest energy, and it goes back out into these, say, Orion or whatever other things, right?
Yes. Okay, so that's
and then they come back in again, and guess what happens then? Though they bring in, it is how I manage what comes back in from these dualistic families, maybe, or wars, or councils, or galaxies that we are in, and it comes back in, and I, Jennifer, then balance this energy.
Yes.
And then that, as I balance, is projected out onto the earth plane.
Okay. So bottom line is, it's because this is what I was connecting in with. It's what happens here in this consciousness of Jennifer and Carolyn, it then exudes back out to the other lives we've lived or are living. Right. And therefore, then influences, how do I explain this? You're saying, and then it influences them. And I'm going to just speak very kind of 3D.
Yes, what you're saying, both ways.
Yes, so it goes both ways. So basically, then those are all those connecting points we make then that then pull us all together. Right. Yes, and I'm talking to all the Carolyns that were ever out there, like my druid self, or, the 1,000 of them. Pulling all that, making those, they just said the connecting threads, because right now, what they're showing is right now, there's just individual points of consciousness that aren't connected into the oneness. That's what's happening. And so then to your point, it comes back.
It comes back. Yes. So I'm getting their information through feeling experience coming in. It's balancing with my consciousness. It's going back out to them, but it's almost like having a massive corporation, but you don't have time to look through all the financials. So your assistant brings you a page that lays it all out for you in condensed form so you can see it. That you can think of as Earth. Okay. So everything that's going on through all of the multiverse, through all of the omniverse that you are involved with, is a condensed report by what are you seeing happening around you on Earth. So that is our, as massive as everything is, you can look up and look around, how's humankind doing? How are we behaving with each other? What is the level of consciousness here? That is my little quick report of the massive corporation that I'm ahead of, but I can't look through all of it, but I can get an idea. How am I doing? How's my corporation doing? By opening my eyes and looking out, because my reality that I am viewing around me is projecting out of my being that is going out and touching everything that is part of me and coming back in as I help balance it. And then as I balance all this stuff within my being, I project out my little quick report into my surroundings, and I can look around and say, how are we doing here?
Mhm.
That's my little quick report of how I'm doing out there. Does that make sense to you?
Yeah, it does.
Okay.
It does. Yes, exactly.
I don't know if that
What?
I don't know if that was helpful. That's what they showed me, that actually the way I just explained it to you. I got the whole visual just like
no,
that.
makes, yes,
like
exactly.
Okay.
No, that's a good snapshot. Oh, snapshot. That's exactly
snapshot is exactly right. Yeah.
Yeah.
But you so I don't know how many people do. I used to do this all the time. I didn't really realize the magnitude of it. But I'd say, okay, I just want to clean everything. I just want to clean my field, let go of anything that's siphoning, taking energy that's not necessary. If there are people looking for power or source, I'm just going to help them redirect their connection directly and not go through my being, or my body or anything. I'd reconnect them to straight into their own. And then I'd clear off cords, right? And then I would recall my energy.
Okay. Yes.
Okay, come back in for purification, for integration, for rejuvenation. And then, you can make your decision whether you want to go back out and keep on energizing that line or maybe do something else, or if they're lost, whatever, bring them all back, right?
Okay. Yes. So now I've got a question for you that's coming up, and this is just so we can have kind of conversation around this to maybe assist others. So in this happening, in us doing that consciously, you doing that practice, for those of us who don't have a clue about any of this, maybe don't understand we're awakening, aren't at this point where we can understand the convergence or even past lives. Is this something that happens automatically, or do we have to be consciously aware? And what is the point of being consciously aware of doing this so that you then participate in having those aspects come back in? So again, I'm not channeling this. This is just asking a question that we can maybe discuss and see how that plays out. Is it happening to unconscious people too?
It is still happening, and it happens a lot through your intention and your integrity. This is one thing I was saying. Even people that are awake, that aren't talking to their team, they're still doing work, but it's directed from their integrity and their intention. It's usually how they're treating themselves. It's their self. That's why I say self-love is so important. How are you being with yourself? That will direct your energy with how it expands out to all of you. Okay. Yes. It'll be directed by how you're treating yourself, how you feel about yourself, your own integrity.
It affects all, and again, I'm talking very simplistically, it affects all past lives, which aren't past lives, they're happening now, but it affects, okay, they just said the words ripple effect again. Remember the last video? They said the ripple effect. So how you are being in your current conscious incarnation, the only one you're aware of, affects all of your other incarnations. And so they play back and forth, which is also why we go through these, like we've said before, some of these horrific times of, where one of my examples has been my shoulder dislocates, my hip dislocates as I'm walking through the hallway, and all of a sudden I'm fine, but I'm clearing I'm clearing, but I'm bringing an aspect back into me from the imposition. So for people that aren't consciously waking up, they may have stuff like that happening and never be able to even understand it at all.
Totally. And the advantage of, I think, that some of the things we've talked about in the past too, is being a conscious creator, being a consciously participating in the awakening process, kind of understanding what's going on so you can enhance it, participate in it a little bit more. Or, I do things like, okay, when we're bringing back aspects, don't let them bring back avatars or hitchhikers, attachments of their own. I have like a triple filter system set up on my being, so I don't actually have to feel it in my body. So it goes through a triple filter that my team is operating and running before it even touched me, because some of these aspects that are coming in, they're coming in some really crazy places. I want to make sure that Jennifer is comfortable as possible in this process. So I'm bringing them back in, getting them as close to the energetic essence of my being before they actually impact this body. And then they get in, and then I start to balance utilizing my organic technology that's built into me, but I'm not necessarily having to feel like, oh, they brought a friend, or, oh, something just happened. And I'm like, ouch,
Well, that's because
that
you've
kind of
also shifted and changed, rose in frequency and vibration. You're able to handle a lot more of that too, is what I'm
Yes,
getting.
yes.
Okay, so I want to go back to something else, a bigger picture along the lines of what we're talking about here is, so in the situation where we're doing what we just talked about, okay, doing the intention, consciously bringing our fragments back in. Okay, so I'm getting the sense of changing course of time, changing the experience that's being had now in the other lives because of what you're doing here. Okay.
Yes.
So consciously aware of what we are doing now projects back out into all our other lives.
Yes.
And what they're saying to me is changes the course of time. So then, okay, so I'm going to go with this, and I don't know where this is going here, but so then does that, okay, they just said the word neutralize. Does that start neutralizing all the experiences that were had out there that were of duality or of anything that wasn't of light? Or what does, because they keep saying neutralize, and they're also talking about it's not just happening here, it's happening in all those lives. So then when that happens,
because they're coming back through the hub. And when they come back through the hub, they're bringing their conscious understanding, experiences, trauma, blah, 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 back in, and they're getting exposed to the love that I'm bringing through my heart, the higher understanding that Jennifer is getting, the level of transcendence that I've been able to achieve, the balance that I am trying to keep in my own body. They're getting washed in that as they come back through.
Yes. So
and it will echo out into where they're at. Okay. They're, what's the energy of what they're participating in you see what I'm saying?
Yes.
It does. It changes what we're thinking of as history.
Yes.
We are changing. It's happening in real time.
Yes, absolutely. So, one of the points that they're wanting to make, which this makes it seem even bigger, but because it kind of is, it's not just about right now, this conscious life. We're affecting all that ever was and is. And
ever will be. Ever will be.
Yes. And this is why they're talking about changing the course of time, because we are changing what we know, to your point, as history, to become more conscious in every one of those journeys.
Yes. This is why when they say, as you ascend, everybody, even the ones that we perceive as already being ascended, already like way past this or whatever we perceive them as already, the higher realms and whatever, they said, as we ascend, they move too. They ascend too. It's not that we're trying to catch up to, we're attached to the whole thing. It all flows through us. And as we ascend, the whole dang thing goes up. Okay. All of it does.
Now, let me ask you this, because all these questions, all these little things are coming in to ask and have a conversation about. So then the next question or thought is, all right, as we're doing our work, is it an individual ascension, or do we not ascend until everybody's ready to ascend? Is it do you see my point? So yes. When we're working, because you just mentioned those that are ascended or the higher dimensions, I don't know if you're talking about humans, but
both, anything. But,
okay. So, and again, this isn't anything I've ever approached to channel, but we can. But is it a situation where, I'm ascending because I've been doing this work, and now all my other parts out here get it, right? Okay, like they're getting the same stuff, the same vibe. Now we're all on the same page. Doesn't mean you have to be conscious aware of all your past lives, but because of the work you're doing in this one consciousness, the life that was really conscious of knowing what to do to make that happen in these times of ascension, then are you moving up the ladder on your own, or are you doing this and enough people have to come along around you to then go? Does that make sense to you?
Both. You're doing both. So it used to always make me laugh when I'd ask a question and I'd say yes. Like, which one? Both. So yes, both of those things are happening because, okay, if you think of it, I don't really like to do it like a hierarchy, but you could say like a source, and there's this, I almost do it like the center. There's source, and then there's the first oversouls, and then there's this. So you are participating individually, but you are always connected to where your center. So you're being influenced. And the more conscious you are, the more influence you may be having, because you're realizing your awareness is guiding how big the ripple is. Okay. When you're aware that you are a multidimensional being, you are connected to everything, your awareness follows, your consciousness follows your awareness. Okay. So when you start realizing that, your energy actually starts spreading a little bit more. So you become more influential over the collective.
Yes.
Okay. Because you're not just focused here.
Right.
When you're realizing, you're like, oh, wait a minute. As soon as you realize it is instant, you're connected. So now you become more of an influencer as your consciousness allows you to realize,
exactly, hey,
I am connected to all this stuff, right?
Yes.
So, but it's both. Both of those things are involved, and we're always influencing each other from one degree or another. But you are an individual, but you are also connected to everything that is.
And so to that end, what I'm receiving is that as you individually ascend, or you keep moving higher dimensionally, as we've always said, my team has always said this to our audience, is that you're going up to the higher dimensional spaces, but you're bringing it back down into the collective to use it, right? They'd always show the figure 8 to bring that back down, which then raises everybody else up as they're on their journey, right? So we're going higher dimensional, pulling in. It's like the figure 8 keeps going up higher and higher. Does it make sense? So
yes, and that it's very similar, same visual kind of than what I was talking about. We're talking about the same thing. When our energy, it comes back up through us, and then we push it back out to all of it's the same concept, what you're saying, going up and bringing it back in. We're in this constant cycle of out to them, back into Carolyn or Jennifer to balance, out to, you understand? Okay. So you're bringing in all of this emotion, all this stuff, all of this. That's really amazing. You think about all of these different facets, aspects, storylines, places, realms, planets. You're human. We talked about this the other day. Remember, we were talking about how we're like we're an emotional ocean, right? The human being is others think of it as like dropping into water, like pure emotion, and trying to swim in it, right? Well, that's one of the very things that makes us so equipped to do this. We feel everything in depth. We have a massive range of emotion. Okay. And emotion is one of the primary creative factors, but it allows us to balance. It allows us to create. It gives our being is very unique in this way, because we're so dynamic and diverse in our emotion. Yes. So that's why all of these things can come back into this person, and I can balance my emotions, where they're not all having these. They're not all having all of this. We're the one that is holding all of the emotion that, as a collective group, all of your facets are bringing you, and you can handle all of them because you understand what I mean?
Yeah, because what they were showing me earlier, as I was tossing this out to them, they're like, well, this consciousness, this life, you raised your hand to do this part of all the others. Does that make sense? Like so they're like, there had to be one of the consciousnesses, one of the incarnations that was going to collect it all, basically, and process it. And so what they're showing to me too, and see what you think of this, they're showing that as we, like you said, things come in and then it flows out. And what it does is every time it flows in, it's kind of like they put a lid on. It may not feel this way, but it's like they put a lid on, they flow in, put a lid on, we work it, then it comes back out, and that opens up more expansiveness, more capacity to then take more in. Does it make sense to you?
Yes. Absolutely.
To continue to do that process of being able to exude out that, like you said, the energies, the transmutation, whatever it is, out into the collective, but then we continue to rise in vibration as we do that processing. And
right. Now, as we're balancing our own human, we project out into, on this plane, what we're seeing with other human beings is kind of the energetic snapshot of how we're balancing. But when we push energy through our own body, this is going back to all of our facets that are all over the place too. It goes into the whole, your whole being. Okay. And so you're balancing some really big things. Some of these, this was why I kind of blew my mind when I heard this. Some of the really big, like wars, for instance, like the Orion War. Okay. Some of these huge families, these galactic families that have been fighting for, eons. Some of those energies you're intentionally, like, I might have an aspect or 2 or 3 or 4 in one of the families, and I might have an aspect 2 or 3 or 4 in the other family. They're still Jennifer's aspects, but they're in families that do not get along.
Right.
But I'm doing it as the one, or I brought in these different ones that maybe don't get along in separation, but I chose to bring them all because I'm trying to balance, trying to help them balance their energies, right?
Which the vast majority of us aren't aware of any of that, right? Like, we don't know that we have a life like that, but to that end, it's happening regardless, is the point we're making. And it's so funny, when you were talking about this, they gave me a visual, and they said, putting the brakes on. It's almost like in the visual you gave of the 2 warring yous, you're part of 2 families that were warring. All of a sudden, conscious awareness comes in to both of them, and they show them changing course because Jennifer was doing that work. Does that make sense to you?
I just got so many chills on that.
So then what happened is, bing, little lights go off. Okay, so you got 2 families, galactic families warring. You're in each of those, right? Okay. And what they're showing is that when that awareness, the light bulb goes on, okay, which starts to shift and change.
I'm saying, I'm realizing, holy crap, I'm part of a whole. We're all one. Oh my goodness. And that consciousness is going out into those aspects. We actually had this happen to us. I just remembered. Do you remember when we were talking to the Anunnaki a lot?
I do remember that. I remember talking to them a lot.
They said something about how they are just now becoming aware of their origins. They're just now starting to realize some things. They're just now, I even got told by Enki that they're not coming. He told me one time, they're not coming anymore. And I thought, what does that mean? And that he was starting to feel like he had some recompense for humanity.
Okay, and not to get off on something different. I with a client just 2 days ago, we were talking about the Anunnaki, and that came through, that they're not coming, but they're coming in a different way. I don't want to get off on that topic, but they're not
coming like what we have in our history. They're coming differently. Yes.
I heard that. I could go on and on about that, but we won't right now.
Okay. So here we are talking about changing history with our consciousness and the beings that we are attached to, the ones that my aspects are in that group, my aspects are in that group. That's another reason why never to judge. Like I said, we were talking this before. Don't get into saying, oh, that Draco group or that group or that group. You've probably got aspects in all of those.
Yes.
And
exactly.
That's the kind of the work that you're doing. So it's pointless to judge these things, right?
Yes. I kind of think I need to say this part because I think it ties. Okay. So what I was talking about, and we can decide if we don't want it in here, what my client and I were talking about, we both have Anunnaki in us, and she's very connected. Anyway, all of a sudden I got this information. I said, oh, they're not coming back in the way we think. They're coming back through us, through if you're Anunnaki, if you have an Anunnaki self out there, they're coming back through us in human form for us to transform ourselves, but that connection with them, and then the return of those aspects of us. And they said, that's how we're going to show up first. In you, the conscious human, say, Carolyn is an example. Does that even resonate? I mean, it feels like it does directly to what we're talking about.
Yes, because you remember they came in and altered. And when they say we're not coming back the same way, when I originally had my first experience with you, and I was talking to you about my conversation with them, they didn't know what Earth was. It hadn't even been created yet.
Right.
So we were talking in that so-called time period, where they hadn't even been here yet. Mm-hmm. And then later, I heard we're not coming in that way. Now when they came in, they altered an existing Okay. So there was some form of understanding that took place where they're not so much interested in altering, because a lot of times some of these little visitations that I was doing, I think I was taking the original, like what we were talking about at the beginning, the original dream, the original idea of what the human form would be, how we were created, who we were going to be embodying, how we would be participating in human form as it was intended to be. And I think some of this traveling that I did all over the place, I was taking that design to some of these groups that had interfered in human evolution over time and saying, listen, this is what was intended. This is kind of what happened. Are you in or are you out? Do you think you want to participate in this, the original, or do you want me to show you what happened when you got involved? I think that was happening. I think that was why I was all over the place. I think that's what my higher being was doing. So now I think that they want to participate, but they want to come in the original planned way of coming in through that original blueprint idea. They don't want to come in and adjust or do anything. They want to come in through like that. Does that make sense?
That's because I think that's
coming back to the one. That's what we're talking about. Coming back into the one, the original. Yes.
Yes. And correct. So that's what this is exactly what they said to me. I said to her, I go, oh, wow, this is new. I said, because she was talking about ships showing up. And I said, guess what? They're telling me that's not how it's going to happen. It's coming through us individually.
Because they've seen what was intended. And many of them that were blown away, frankly. Yeah. They were blown away like that is the most beautiful thing I've ever seen. Nobody touch it. It changed their entire view of everything. They were on board the second they saw it. The second they saw it and saw it was created in such an amazing and beautiful way.
Well, they helped create it.
The moment they saw it, they totally changed everything about the way they thought about humankind and everything. They not only said, we will not interfere or try to tweak or do anything to them. In fact, we're getting in line.
Oh, you're talking
so
the original.
We can blueprint. Come in like that too. It's so amazing.
You're talking about the original. Sorry, I keep talking over you.
Yes.
You're talking.
I'm talking about the original.
Okay,
the original plan, the original idea, the original dream, the concept of what it was supposed to be. And I had several experiences where I couldn't see myself. I was actually asking my guardian, what do I look like? Because I'm having a conversation with some of these big beings, and I basically, a lot of the time when I was there, I was having a lot of, it was difficult for my body to be in a condensed or state like that, because I could feel a lot, but I was kind of cringing. So I did that thing where I expand my field, like open up my energy and expand my field, and I energized what I was there to show them. And several, my guard, I'm like, whew. And I got this response like, oh my God, like, wow, what is that? And I asked my guard, what do I look like? Like they're responding to me like that. And I'm like, what does this look like? And he said, it's like you energized the original blueprint and they're seeing it. And everything, it was almost like whatever was going on, whatever ideas they had about humankind, whatever attachments or ownerships or anything that was going on in their mind or at the time, it was like it was gone. Yeah. When they saw how beautiful this thing was, it was over. Right. So I remember this thing occurring, this happening a few times. Anunnaki was one of them. I'm not sure who the other one was, but they're on Saturn, whoever the other group is. And then there was a few, but now that you're talking about this, I'm remembering this happened to me about two and a half years ago.
Yeah, this is starting to tell a story, because it's not just about, like we've been able in part of this to bring in other experiences we've had, like with my client, and the sense we talked about other couple things you and I talked about. And so it kind of is converging into this larger understanding.
But you think about, here we are understanding that we're one, that we're the blueprint. Okay. And this is just me kind of having these experiences, having these realizations, and my consciousness is allowing me to push out enough to start participating or interacting with these other
Yes.
in order for them to see. So as I am learning, it's almost like I'm waking up, it's making them remember too, in a way. Does that make sense?
Oh, completely. That's the whole point. That's what I'm saying. Yes, absolutely. And that was my idea of when we were talking about we influence by our waking up and conscious awareness. We're influencing those other lives. We're like those two clans or the two galactic. We're like, oh, wait, what are we doing here? Why are we warring? Kind of thing. Yes,
exactly.
So
right.
So ultimately, that's part of that, bringing the fragments back and the pieces of us back, because ultimately it's not just about Earth.
That's right.
It's the entire galactic system.
Yes.
Intergalactic system. That's part of this, because we're all connected.
Yes. It's so amazing, really.
Go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, go ahead. That changes.
Well, what I was going to say is, so let's just take this for a little further, and then I have like 10 minutes. If we take this a little further, then what? Do you know what I'm saying? Like, okay, so now what we've done is we're connecting into, whether we know it or not, other aspects of ourselves, and influencing them at a higher dimension, influencing, continued rising frequency, vibration, influencing the human collective as well, influencing our other aspects, like I said, our other lives. And now, so they're showing, I'll just tell you what they're showing, and then maybe we can decipher this. They're showing a collapsing in. That's the movement to oneness.
Well, see, I've been getting this concept, and then I heard somebody say something the other day. I said, oh, that's perfect, at least for Earth, how to think about Earth, that new Earth is actually ancient Earth.
Yes. Okay. Because of, go ahead. Keep going.
Yes. So if you think about it in concept, we're talking about time, but we would say ancient maybe would be closer to the original idea or the inception point of, even though it's not really time related. But if we're talking about, we're actually like new Earth, what we're thinking of as new Earth is actually ancient Earth, closer to the original dream, closer to the original thought, right? Yes. So it would be kind of ancient Earth in that sense. And I'm thinking, yes, that's right. So the collapsing in part, I think of as just getting back to that beautiful original thought. It doesn't mean
that blueprint. Yes.
Yeah. And then I don't know, it kind of see it like you collapsing back into that, but then allowing that, really embracing that and really getting that and allowing that then to expand in the different energy of the original. Does that make sense?
Yes.
So it's not like everything's going to stop, but it's going to maybe expand with a different energy. Okay.
So what they've shown me in the past, which I think aligns directly to this, however this plays out, they talk about, again, I speak in very simple terms, so please can understand. We think of the Big Bang happening, right? That's what we call it. But what they've told me is everything has been available to happen all at once, or what we'll call all at once. And so then what is occurring then, they say, is it's collapsing back in to the great oneness. We do it individually. Then in the collective, we come into this point. They call it, for me, they're calling it the 0 point, the balance, the little nothingness. But to your point you just made, and then I'm like, well, what happens again? And they say, we just do it all over again. And so the do it all over again is what I'm picking up here, is when we get to the point you just said of, we're back to that blueprint, then we expand out from there. Does that
yes. And I think we've all been doing that process. We've all been doing that kind of individually in our own universe, in our own oversoul groups. I think we've been doing that process multiple times. I think what's different about this now is that we're all of the separate ones are even coming into this oversoul, and then the oversoul's coming into we're doing it we're pulling it all back in.
Yeah, totally.
Okay. Yep. So like these little mini processes that have been happening over and over again, I think I think they have been doing exactly what you're saying, but it hasn't been as collective as this one is. I think this one is
Completely.
all of it's coming
It
back
is.
in
Yes.
to the kind of the alpha. They always keep saying alpha and omega,
Yes.
coming back into alpha omega.
Right. Exactly.
Does that make sense?
Oh, completely. This all aligns with the different ways of explaining it. It all aligns to the things I've received previously, but expands out the understanding of it. Absolutely.
Yeah. Now, I was thinking about this earlier, as much as if our consciousness starts to allow us to see through experiences or meditation or visions or just knowing, your knowing comes in and you just, I had this concept wash over me and I just know that it's true, right? A lot of that is sometimes how your consciousness rises.
Right.
But what I was, we were thinking about earlier, okay, we realized that there's more than one of us. And then we realized, hey, we're all connected. And then we realized, hey, we're all connected, not just me parts, yes. That we're all, and you keep moving. And some of the things that it just keeps going and expanding on itself. It's so beautiful and dynamic that, we're not just the individuals, some of the individuals walking around on those different planets. We are those planets too. Yes. We're the planets, we're the elements, we're the ether that runs through everything. We're the, you know what I'm saying? It's like even the interdimensional structures that we operate within, those are us too.
Well, and what they're saying, which seems obvious, but that's the separateness that we've known supposedly for so long, which is so false. That's what's breaking down. We're not separate.
Yes.
There's no, and when they talk about separate from God, that's
you
everything. That's separate from everything is what they're talking about. But so we're coming back into that fullness, that oneness, where we're not separate from anything at all.
And we're starting to realize it more and more. So as I'm saying this, here I'm sitting here thinking, oh my God, that's so amazing. As I'm thinking that, I'm pulsing that out to everything that's attached to me.
Yeah.
So even at other consciousness levels, there's some beings that you talk to that seem like they're incredibly advanced. Yeah. They might be incredibly advanced in technology and science, even in metaphysical and quantum, but there is maybe compassion, they're not. Right? Maybe empathy, they're not.
Yes.
Maybe in heart coherence, they're not. So what we think of as being so advanced, knowledge, whatever, there's a lot. It's very complex, right? Oh. So, even as I'm thinking, well, they're flying around in a spaceship. What am I going to teach them, right? There's all of this stuff that we have as a human that they're not necessarily familiar with. And even so, as I am sending what I'm bringing in, what they're, bringing in their imbalances into me, flooding it with my heart coherence, right? That are understanding or realizations that I started to have, and it's going back out to them. Yes, there is actually a lot of stuff that they're learning from my being, right?
Right. And if you've done any what is I call past life work, because that's a lot of what I do. We call it past life work because we talk about time in 3D. But the thing is, it's that life that's happening now. But when we start communicating with those individuals that we knew we were, that is part of that processing that they then start to become aware of, and you start to become aware of them, and you both learn.
Yes.
So you both learn, and then you rise in your, you transform exponentially as a result of that kind of processing, whether it's conscious or not, really. But
so you and I have had some really pretty incredible conversations too. Now that we're on this line of some of the beings that we've talked to, that we've realized they've come to some pretty big realizations about the nature of their reality.
Exactly.
Just from their interaction with us, right?
Yeah. And I do have to wrap up, but and I know we could continue this and we might want to, but one thing that they're saying to me right now is, this whole weirdness with time, how everybody time just doesn't feel right. It doesn't feel, it's so completely different. Now it's either going fast, slow, or you feel like you're at a standstill. That's part of all of what we're talking about here, of this converging into, it's like this it's converging into the point again, where they keep saying all can happen at once. Is that making any sense? Like, that's why the time thing is so strange right now, because we're going to start and I think we're already starting to realize this more and more of how, I don't know how to explain. Okay, I'm not going to know how to explain this.
It's okay. Try.
They're giving me a visual of like your past lives. They're just standing right beside you. They're right next door. It's not time expand. It's not a linear time as we know kind of thing.
Yeah.
You're all right here. You're right here. And that's the closing in on that is this idea of getting rid of the idea that there is actual time, because time's going to change when we move into the further down the road Aquarian age energies, and it's going to affect how we operate, but more importantly, how we perceive is what they're saying. Now we're getting into a time conversation, which probably is for another, but does that feels like this connects to this whole conversation?
Well, let me tell you, my son, who's on the spectrum, sometimes, he's kind of activated my telepathy. And so sometimes when he is more connected and in my energy, my mind starts feeling his mind sometimes. Okay. And you want to talk about woo. So he is completely out of time. And in fact, when he was little, it was kind of small, I said, can you explain time to me? And I'm like, you want me to like teach you how to read a clock? And I realize now that is not what he was talking about. No. And I said, I don't understand. You want me to explain time? I said, why? What's wrong? He said, it's stupid.
Yeah, because he doesn't operate that way. Exactly.
I have felt him. He does not operate in time. So kind of like when his energy and mine are kind of, it is kind of like this, whoa. Yep. It's completely, there's no time element at all. It's very different.
What I'm getting also, and then, like I said, I got to wrap up.
Okay.
What I'm getting with him is because he doesn't have time. He's the kind of that idea of everything is the oneness is not a hard he already knows that. Like it's all here. It's all right here.
It's all available. It's all right here, right now, whenever, right?
Right, because I bet you if you talked about a past life, you go, I don't know what you're talking about, past. Like,
you know what I mean? This guy's standing here right now.
Okay, there's our conversation today. I hope you've taken something away from it for your own journey, and I so appreciate you joining us today. Keep in mind, this is an individual journey that then expands out into the rest of the collective. And remember, this is all energetic, and what you can't see is more powerful than you can even imagine. So the individual work that you're doing, give yourself a pat on the back. Know that it matters. Even if you don't feel like you see something as you're human, it matters. It completely matters. So thank you so much for what you're doing for the collective. Check out my services, purplerainhealing.com, if you're looking to get some assistance on your journey forward, whether it be channeled messages, one-on-one mentoring, or soul journeys, where we give you an expansive view of your entire soul journey. So with that today, I thank you again for joining me, and I will see you in the next video.